What is up, my friends? Welcome to another episode of the Whole Healthy Rob Carney podcast. We got my boy, the chief golf coach, Jordan Chartier here, back again. It's crazy. You listened to our last episode. We were just talking about before. We weren't as close as we are now. It's funny you kind of hear it was about a year and a half ago when, we were still getting into that flow. And now, Jordy's one of my best friends now, and it's exciting to have him back. And as we're both in the Boston area, figure why not do one in person and chop it up. So a little bit about this podcast, we're going to be reflecting on the year of 2021, which we've had a lot of great experiences, a lot of great retreats, and just kind of chop it up where we're at, where we're going. So Jordy, welcome back, bro.
Thank you so much. It's great to be here. Great to be back on the show. Got to listen to our previous episode, which was done in April of 2020. And there was a lot going on then. There's a lot going on now. So looking forward to see what comes up out of this.
Yeah, I think there's always going to be a lot going on for the rest of our lives. So at the end of the day, we've had a pretty eventful year. Thinking about 2021, even just going back to January, I feel like a lot has changed in my life, in your life, our lives already. And the biggest thing that stands out is the trips we've had in terms of the retreats we've been on, the growth of Ice and Iron, the growth of our individual businesses, the growth of us as individuals. And I'd love to just give you the start of what's been the theme of 2021 so far, and any big takeaways. Not any. I know there's a lot. Which are the big takeaways?
Yeah. So big takeaways from the year, kind of touching on what you just mentioned. There was a lot going on in 2020. Now we're in 2021. There's still a lot going on. The one thing we're guaranteed is adversity in this life. We're going to be exposed to things that might stress us out. So what I share and what I've learned from my experience is, how do you deal with the stress, right? How do you cope with it? And that's something I'm learning more every day. What are these little vices we may have, and what's your practice? Can you deal with stress by taking a walk or learning to sit with it and literally breathe through it? Or does one need to rely upon, something like alcohol or some other vice, whether it's smoking cannabis or television? We could do something to distract ourselves from being present. Exactly. Right. So there's a fine line between enjoying something to kind of take a break from what's going on and then escaping. So striking the middle point between the two.
Right. It's funny too, because even just hanging out with our boy Ryan Spriggs, shout out Highly Optimized. He's definitely this year, a big takeaway for me is really changing my relationship with cannabis. You mentioned cannabis as a vice, which a lot of my life, it was a vice. It was escapism, like you said. And he's done a really good job, I feel, at, leading cannabis ceremonies and really re-engaging my relationship with cannabis and using it as a tool as opposed to that vice, that escapism. And I think that's something that, it's really been a big impact for me, because on a lot of these retreats we've been on with Ryan, especially, it's like a lot of aha moments could have been on cannabis and recognizing, like, wow, I kind of had this old story of how I used to use cannabis and how I thought it was supposed to be used, but now it can be a tool. And I think that's just like anything, like you said. You could use TV, that example, that could totally be escapism, or it could be watching a documentary that's expanding your mind. It's so funny. That's a big takeaway for me this year is everything is just neutral. It's how we use that. But most people are using things in an escapism and a self-destructive way.
Right. So touching upon cannabis, I'm actually in a class with him now. It's been phenomenal.
Nice.
It's called Connecting with Cannabis, and realizing that is a medicine, because I can relate to you and your experience that I abused it for a long time, and now I'm choosing it when the time is right. So before a podcast, I have no need to do that. Before I go work with people in the gym, that's not serving me. But maybe if I didn't choose to engage with it for a month or so and we go on a retreat, yeah, that's fun. That's enjoyable. And you get to appreciate that medicine and not rely upon it.
For sure. Yeah, and I find that I like to enjoy the cannabis when I'm doing something creative as well. The other night, Jackie and I had a little date night and doing some painting in the other room there, and had some bags going, had a little cannabis in there. And I remember at Paul Check's, the mandala workshop we did with him, I was having a lot of, creative block. And that's funny. That was in this year too. That seems like that was freaking ages ago, but that was also this year. And, that was a big, big piece for me that I realized I had a lot of creative blocks and a lot of, artistic trauma in a sense that, some teacher told me in middle school that I was bad at art and kind of held on to that. I remember getting to that mandala workshop and kind of getting that like painter's block and like artist block. And I remember like looking around and being like, oh man, these people's paintings are so good. And this is as I'm getting a little high. So I'm like, getting paranoid and getting over analyzing. And then I caught myself and was like, whoa, where's this coming from? Why? And then kind of traced it back. And that was like day one. I remember like day two, everyone else was like mostly done. And I was like, had like 3 things painted on there.
Yep.
But recognizing that so many things in our lives, we attach feelings or associations to or labels to, that if we can let go of those labels and just recognize that everything is just neutral, it's completely in here that's going to determine how we use that.
100%. It's all in our head, right?
It is.
We have to get out of our own way.
Right.
That's something I'm realizing is sometimes I'm in my own way.
100%.
If I could get out of my own way, then I'm doing a lot better.
Right.
I'm more productive. I can enjoy life more, more efficient. All these things that we intend to be, right?
Right. And I think too, it's, we talk about there's discipline and freedom, or freedom and discipline as well. And I think that's been a big theme of the past few months for me, especially. I mean, I got my whiteboard over here and I'm doing my best to just be as disciplined as I can, because it's so easy to be distracted by everything. Even when I feel like I'm a pretty intentional, mindful person, I get distracted. I think we all get distracted. There's just an abundance of distractions available out there from our phones. Even just recognizing, if I check my phone every few minutes, every 5-10 minutes, whatever, because I think, like, what if, there's a business deal or whatever thing I'm telling myself, it's not going to kill me if I wait. And that's just taking away from other aspects, that really being disciplined and honing in on one thing and focusing all in on one thing, going to get a whole heck of a lot more done than trying to multitask.
Yeah, well, we're not meant to multitask. And to circle back to discipline, I believe it was Jocko Willink, and we say that all the time: discipline equals freedom. And then we can circle back to intentions. So what's our intention when using the technology?
Right.
I can be intentional with this tool that is a cell phone, and that's great. I myself am not really using it that often. And if anyone ever sees me on social media, you rarely see me on social media, for better or worse. And, I'm setting the intention now to put something up, to make a couple more posts and become more current again. But yeah, it's like, what's our intention with things?
Right.
What's our intention with this podcast? What's our intention with how we spend our time? Because we do have a lot of time, but on the same token, we're only here for really a flash,
Right?
A drop in the pan.
In the grand scheme of things, it's not that long.
It's really not. And it's a beautiful opportunity that we have to be in this life. And, I'm just thankful to be here with you. So
Hell yeah, bro.
you're keeping me more intentional and more disciplined. So it's an honor to be here again.
It's mutual. And I think with the, like you said about the technology, it's like you said, it's just a tool. And just like we have been talking about, it's how we use the tool. And there's the part of me that wants to completely disconnect and go live in the woods and grow my own food and just be away from it all. But we've had this conversation. Like, we don't want to be off grid. We want to be touching the grid. We just don't want to be in the grid. We want to be having a little bit of both, because there's pros and cons to all of it. And at the end of the day, I mean, this has allowed me to have be able to live in this home because I can run an online business. And that's great. That's phenomenal. But there's also a side of me that sometimes I'm sitting here for, 16 hours a day. Some days I'm in the house for 3 days straight. And then it's like, man, I got to go see some people. I got to go make some moves, got to go, do whatever and connect with people in person. But I love the opportunity to be able to be here in my home and work from home. I can wake up, this morning I journaled, went for a weighted vest walk, took a shower, ate some breakfast, worked on my gardening course. And I can do that because I have created the freedom to work from my own. Whereas if I was having to go to a job, do something in person, I wouldn't have that freedom. So there's pros and cons. And that's what I think a big thing, what I love about Ice and Iron is, to me, that's kind of like every month we have almost like a playoff game. Like it's just like everything comes together. It's all the hype is there. And now it's like we get to really just soak in all the energy of all these other people. And I know you are working with people in person on a regular basis. And, it's kind of funny how we're on opposite ends of the spectrum, that most of your work is in person, most of my stuff's online, but it's, we're both working to create that blend of two.
100%. Yeah, it's a really nice thing to circle into Ice and Iron, how it's a playoff game. I love how you put that, because we're all month getting excited for the game.
Right.
We're thinking, oh, I got in touch with this kid. You got your buddies from high school. Ed has his old football players. And we get this beautiful blend of like-minded souls that can come together and create. And that's where the magic is, right?
Right. And it's all about growth. And I think that's a big thing that I recognize about Ice and Iron is it comes down, it's just people that want to grow. Like you said, like-minded. We could be like-minded just in the sense that we want to push ourselves. And like we were talking about earlier, kind of getting uncomfortable and, forcing ourselves to grow. I think that's a big thing when it comes to discipline is in order to stimulate growth, we have to create discomfort, because if we're living that comfort zone, nothing's going to happen.
Right.
And I think that the ice bath, that's what most people come for. And I think when most people come to Ice and Iron, they're like, oh yeah, well, I want to do the ice bath thing. But there's a lot more layers to that, between the movement, the Tai Chi, the breath work, which is kind of the X factor. I think that's a really underrated piece. It's like, people are going to work out, get an ice bath, but most people are blown away by the breath work. And I think that's a pretty crazy thing.
Yeah. So what I'm thinking right now is a challenge creates growth, and how you choose to cope with the challenge or cope with the stress. That's going to either foster growth or hinder your own evolving.
Right.
And I feel a big part of, especially with breath work, with an ice bath, it's pushing through the resistance and not forcing it, because force can be a strong word, and we may have bastardized that word in today's world, but kind of moving through the resistance, like with breath work. That's something I'm proud of myself to say, and I laugh with Ed about it all the time, how we get that resistance of maybe a dry mouth, and you need to cough, or you're thirsty, or you need to readjust, and you can do that momentarily, but dive right back in.
Right.
Dive right back into pumping the breath and pushing through the resistance.
Right.
Without forcing it, just keep going.
Right. And I think that's something, that's really, like you were saying earlier, about getting in your own way. It's so funny, and there's so many tools, whether it's cold showers, ice baths, breath work, exercise. When we're aware of that little voice in our head telling us to stop, telling us this is bad, telling us this is uncomfortable, do something else. If we can recognize that voice is there to protect us from being uncomfortable, and that's great in a life or death situation, but in a growth situation, you can call it the inner bitch, you can call it whatever you want to. That thing is also eating us alive. And most people hear that voice and label it as truth. And I think that's a big, challenge, because if you look at the society as a whole right now, overweight, diabetes, just generally unhealthy people, it's listening to that voice in the head. I don't need to go for a walk right now because I'm pretty comfortable in this chair. This TV show is pretty good. This is a lot easier. Path of least resistance.
Right.
I think that's been a big takeaway from, and we talked about in the past couple of retreats, is the David Goggins book, Can't Hurt Me. And that I just started listening to it again yesterday. So now it's all fresh in my mind again, but it's just like reprogramming my brain, like he says, is to find the path of most resistance. Because wherever you have the most resistance, there's going to be a lot more room for growth than the path of least resistance. And as I've been going on these weighted vest walks, I just shared a story this morning of every time I put that thing on, the first 5 minutes, my ego's like, yeah, this is cool. I'm getting a good workout in. Did about 30 minutes today, and it's about 23 pounds. So not terribly heavy, but, after a while, I start to lean on the traps and all that. My brain is telling me, oh man, adjust it, and I'm in a neighborhood, so I can turn off basically at any point. It's, it's a grid essentially, so you can cut off. And my brain's always like, oh yeah, like this would be shorter to get home, kind of analyzing that path is like, then I got to stop myself. Like, my purpose of here is to walk. Right. My purpose isn't to get it done. It's to do the walk, not to get through the walk, but actually enjoy the walk. And so every time the little voice in my head is telling me, oh, you could just go home, this would be a lot faster. I go one more block, and then go one more block.
Yeah.
And then I just end up going the longest route as opposed to taking the shortest route, even though my mind is yelling at me. It's a daily reconditioning of my own brain, which is something that I think we all need to do more of, is to put ourselves in these situations that we're forced to combat that little voice rather than just think, all right, I'm just going to listen to it. Put ourselves in situations to overcome that little inner bitch.
Yeah. Well, that's a good word. The inner bitch. That's what a cold shower or an ice bath will kind of knock it out of you.
Right.
And, I had a really good laugh with Frank. Most of you guys know Frankie Wahlberg, our boy, love the kid. And we had a good laugh in the woods, bro, running up the hill, and we were climbing down. And he didn't even say it intentionally for me to hear him, but I did. And he's like, we didn't come here to take the easy road. And he had a good Goggins impression, and I was dying laughing because it's so true. It's really profound, and it's true that if you're taking the easy route all the time, you're not going to become your best self.
Right.
You're not really going to elicit and encourage that growth to evolve.
Right.
And while it's nice to be comfortable, it's nice to be sheltered from the elements.
Right.
And of course, have water.
Right.
And have clean clothes. That's a good thing.
Based on survival.
We need that first level in Maslow's hierarchy of needs.
Right.
We don't want to dwell in the comfort.
Right.
We want to enjoy it, but also step out of that from time to time.
Right.
Definitely, that's where the growth is.
Right.
That's how we're going to get better.
Yeah, and it's funny too because we have this opportunity to live the most comforting life ever. Again, we don't have to even leave our houses anymore. We can have food delivered to us. We can work from home. Like if we wanted to, we all could just live in our own little cubes and never leave. And that's an option. But like we're saying, you got to also push that comfort zone. And I think that it's also important to recognize, well, in this world of, health and wellness, people talk about balance a lot, work-life balance, balance lifestyle, balance, whatever. But also recognizing sometimes we need to embrace periods of imbalance. And that was a big thing at the North Carolina retreat we went to, talking to Lissa. And, we're talking about me adding muscle, getting stronger. And she basically was saying, you can't go for a longevity approach and a muscle building approach at the same time. So if I'm intermittent fasting, I'm doing calorie restrictive, and I'm doing, high reps, lower weight. Yeah, that's great for longevity. But if my goal is to build muscle in the short term, you can't do both. And that inherently is creating an imbalance in my life because I'm spending more time now exercising and spending more time now cooking. And that's creating an imbalance in my life from what was once balanced. But now I'm creating a new balance. And sometimes we need to go off on a tangent. Sometimes if we're starting a business, we may need to work 16 hours a day, which you can't do that forever. That would be an imbalanced lifestyle for most people to work every waking hour. But it's okay to embrace this period of imbalance because that's what's going to stimulate growth. And it's this fine line of recognizing, again, come back to comfort. We can say, balance for me is, I go to my 9 to 5, I come home, I watch TV and, cool. But you're not going to be growing from that.
Yeah. I mean, to wrap it up and encapsulate that, not too much, not too little.
Right.
That's the way we're going to heal. We don't want to have too much movement. We want to have the right movement. But we definitely want to make sure we have enough movement.
Right.
You don't want to sleep all day.
Right.
Then you're in a coma. But if you don't sleep at all, you're going to burn out and have adrenal fatigue, which is super common today. Water can drown you.
For sure.
But also, we're made of water. We're water beings.
Right.
So it's like, how do you gauge that middle point and do your best to stay there? Because that's what humans are. The middle point between night and day, feminine, masculine, hot, cold, things that a lot of people don't even consider. And the more I consider it, the more I can reflect and be aware of it and realize that, hey, if I'm a little out of balance and going too much or not going enough, I need to just be aware of that. And I get to be aware of that. And with that awareness, that allows you to, do the right thing and make the change.
Right. And that's contrast. And I think that we need that contrast because in this day and age where we're trying to equalize everything and make everything the same, now there's no contrast. If we were happy all the time, it wouldn't really be that great because there's no balance, there's no counterweight to that. And that's what I find, I rarely get sick, but when I get sick, which is maybe, every couple of years or so, and I feel like shit, I'm reminded, wow, it feels really good to be healthy because right now it freaking sucks. Or if I have a, poor night's sleep and I wake up exhausted, it reminds me how nice it is to wake up well rested. And just like the days that we push ourselves too hard in the gym, let's say, the next day we're freaking so sore we can barely lift our arms over our head. It reminds us how good it feels to feel strong and healthy as opposed to, being sore and just feeling kind of like weak and fatigued.
Yeah.
So I think that it's really important to also seek that contrast. Same thing with the ice bath. We're in a temperature controlled climate most of the day. If we're staying inside or we're in our air conditioned cars, or if we're in a heated house in the winter. But once you go and find that contrast, one, it shocks the body and stimulates growth. And two, it allows me to recognize if everything was the same, life would be so freaking boring that we need things to be different. We need people to be different. We need ideas to be different. We need languages to be different, just the difference of culture. And I think it's just really important for people to seek that contrast and not just stay in their lane, what they know, what they believe, and what they've been, taught, and seek outside sources. That's going to give them a little bit of contrast.
Yeah, beautifully put. The world would be dull. It would be boring if everybody were the same. If Jordan and Rob loved the same exact things and we read the same exact books and listened to the same podcasts and did the same line of work. If everyone did the same exact thing, it would be a really dull, boring, gray world.
Right.
So we need that yin and that yang. We need strong male presence. We need strong female presence. And without going off on a tangent about that, we do need to honor where we are, but yes, seek out that contrast and step out of that comfort zone to elicit the growth.
Right. 100%. And I think that comes, like you're saying, we all have individual interests as well. And like you said, you may like this type of book, I may like that type of book. And I think obviously we have a lot of similarities in what we enjoy and spend time investing our time in. But at the end of the day, there's also differences. And, I kind of just want to shift gears a little bit into what you've been working on this year in your personal world of the chief golf coach, and also where your intentions are moving forward for the rest of this year.
Yeah. So this year has been one of being a lot busier in the gym, being a lot busier with ice and iron, which is great. And I can relate to you. I remember you saying your business was up here and then maybe it trickled down a little bit. And we all go through these cycles. So I'm at that point of really riding a high and then slowly, maybe not as busy, and do my best to just honor that up and down of life, but know that we're moving forward.
Right.
So my intentions for the year is to continue being more disciplined, working on that, and creating an online platform, creating a community, much like Ice and Iron, but on my own, that will empower people to become more balanced, to become more whole, and really be able to become a better version of themselves.
Nice.
Because a lot of the outside world that we're subjected to, whether it's the media, whether it's maybe lies we were fed in, like the food pyramid, for it's a small, easy example, like fat's not good for you, salt isn't good for you.
Pasteurized dairy, eat mostly grains.
Seek the outside sources and then try it out, because you learn from experience. So that's another one of my big intentions, to experience more, experience continuing to meet new people, and just doing my best to keep it going. Like the Ice and Iron model, just keep it going. No matter where you are, if you're listening, don't compare yourself to Jordan, Chartier, or Rob Carney, or Paul Check, or whoever you follow, Goggins. Just keep it going.
Right.
Like, not stay in your own lane, but to some degree, worry about yourself.
Right.
Do your best, learn from what you went through, and keep it going.
Yeah.
That's the way we're going to make it.
Yeah. And I think, like you said, worry about yourself. I think that's actually really important to do, because we have this comparison age on social media. Everybody's trying to be like that, or jealousy of that, or, keeping up with the Joneses, that whole, mentality. And I think it's important to recognize that, yeah, it's okay. It's not selfish to just shut off the phone and focus on what you got to do.
Mm-hmm.
Again, come back to a period of imbalance. Maybe you need to lock yourself in a fucking cabin for the next 3 months to write your book or make your program or do some personal development work, whatever it is. That's okay. It's not selfish. And I think that's a big thing that, again, it's this others before self mentality at times that it comes back to, we can't, like you always say, we can't pour from an empty cup. So we got to fill our own cups up first. And that's okay. It's not selfish. That's okay.
Yeah.
Like if you got to tell your friends and family, hey, I got to focus on me for a little bit. I think they're going to respect that. Unless you have like a baby and your baby is completely dependent on you. Yeah, that would be selfish. You just had a kid and now you're telling the kid fend for yourself.
Right.
That's selfish. But for most of us, if we communicate with the people in our life and say, hey, I just need a little bit of space right now. I need to focus on me for a week, 2 weeks, 2 months, however long it is. I think that's something we all really need. And I find that the times I've done that is the times that I really stimulate growth, like going on these retreats. That's a time where I tell Jackie, I tell my family, I tell my business partners, hey, I'm retreating for the next 5 6 days, and then I'll be back. But I am asking for this time. If you need me, obviously let me know. But if it's not urgent, I'm going to be here doing my thing. And there's a lot of growth that can come in a very short amount of time. We set an intention and just focus on ourselves and shut out the outside world.
Yeah, that's reminding me of a really special book called When the Body Says No. And that, to keep it simple, setting your boundaries, right? If you're all day pleasing other people and you haven't met your own basic needs and you can't set a boundary, if you can't say no, your body will say no for you.
Right.
And again, like we say all the time, if my cup is empty and I can't pour anything out of it, if I choose to try to keep pouring more, there's not going to be anything left, and then I'm going to burn out. And that's going back to the middle point of too much yang, too much sharing. And maybe that's why I'm not super prevalent online, is that I don't really need to share more than I already am. And there's a lot to be shared, and the world needs it, not from Jordan only, but from Rob, from people that we follow and know and love. But you have to honor your own basic needs.
Right.
And fulfill those first and foremost.
Right.
Because it's not going to be sustainable.
Right.
Just like working out. Yeah, we definitely want to challenge ourselves and go heavy on the weights if we're getting the good rest, if we're recovering, if we're taking time to walk with or without a weighted vest.
Right.
If you learn to breathe properly and slow down, because we're in a go society, and that's phenomenal. But a lot of people worship that mindset of getting shit done, and don't honor the quiet time.
Right. I mean, even me personally, I can definitely say this has been a big acceptance point for myself, is that I shame myself when I'm not working. I beat myself up when I'm not working if I'm not being productive. But sometimes, like you said, the most productive thing we can do is actually to do nothing and actually recharge our own battery. Sometimes the best thing we can do is on that Sunday, stay in bed for another 2 hours and just, kind of in a half asleep, half awake zone, or even going back to sleep, or even just laying there in bed, reading or journaling. Like sometimes that's the best thing we can do is to actually do nothing, because like you said, there's this outside pressure. And for me, I perceive it as, like you said earlier, we're here for a short amount of time, but we're also in it for the long run. So it's finding that fine balance. But I think it's easy to feel like we're behind. I feel like sometimes waking up, if I check my phone right away, that's the worst thing I can do. I check my phone, I see all these notifications, emails, social media, direct messages, all these things. And it's like, oh, fuck, I'm already behind. Like, let me catch up to what happened while I was sleeping. But rather, like I just said, so I got my morning routine set, and my intention is to not check my phone until after. So I have journal, walk, cold shower, breakfast, and then get into work. My intention is to not check my phone until after I get out of the shower, because sometimes, phones, dinner, breakfast is cooking. have an audiobook playing, or maybe, some time in between. Yeah, I'll check my phone. That's the goal.
Mm-hmm.
But on the days I wake up and check my phone, instantly stress mode,
Mm-hmm.
instantly feeling behind, instantly scarcity, instantly limiting beliefs, instantly comparison. All these things, our brain is so susceptible when we first wake up. It's like that meditative state. It's really in a susceptible, which is why a lot of spiritual people say best time for meditation, right when you wake up. Best time for creativity, right when you wake up.
Mm-hmm.
All these different things we can do when we wake up, because we're so susceptible at times. So if anybody is listening to this, you take one thing away from this: don't check your phone when you first wake up. If I reflect on my day, infinitely better if I didn't check my phone right after that.
Mm-hmm. I agree 1,000,000%. Another quote that we always discuss is the morning is the child of the day.
Right.
So I rarely wake up and look at my phone. If I see a text message, I might pop a response out really quick, but I'm not looking at my phone and scrolling through what this person's up to, checking social media.
Right.
That's not serving me.
Right.
If I were in a position where I needed to give an immediate response to a client or a loved one, you have, you get to do that, and that's the right thing to do.
Like that verbiage, caught yourself, get to do it.
Yeah, and that's the right thing to do is, reach out to those that maybe need your help. But once you've met your needs, so you have your journaling practice in, that's beautiful. You get to take a walk, you get to nourish yourself. That's filling your cup up, So I love everything that you're about, and I hope that the listeners can glean something from this to, fulfill your own needs first and set your boundaries.
Right. I'm glad you said that, because it's funny. It wasn't really even intentional in that regard, that it was to fill my cup up first. It was more just, these are the things that make me happy. It wasn't really conscious. It was just kind of like, these are the things that I want to do. So I'm going to do them in the beginning of the day. Because, a lot of successful people talk about that. If you don't do things in the beginning or the end of your day, everything else in the middle is mayhem. If we're being honest, we have no idea what's going to happen in the middle of our day, but we can always control what we do when we first wake up and what we do right before we go to bed. And I think that's why a lot of people talk about like morning and evening habits. No one really talks about midday habits, because if you're going to a job, you're doing X, Y, and Z, we have no idea what's going to happen. And so I think, like you were saying, you get to do things. That's something that reminds me, other big takeaway from this year has been my verbiage and how the words I speak and the stories I tell about myself are 100% influencing my life and how I enjoy things, how I go about things. Even at the Martha's Vineyard retreat, talking to our boy Chopper Dave, talking about running. What did I say? Oh, I don't like running. I'm not a runner. That's not true.
Right.
That's just a story I've told myself. And then I started running, and I was like, I've always liked sprinting, but I told myself I don't like distance running. But all about the verbiage. Now I've been becoming a runner, becoming a consistent runner. The first few times sucked. It wasn't enjoyable, but just like, first time you go to the gym, it sucks. Like, you don't know what you're doing. It hurts. Your body's sore. You're working muscles you haven't worked in a while. Push that discomfort, push that period of imbalance. Now it's starting to get a little bit enjoyable, because now I'm playing the mental game. Like I was saying with the weighted vest walks, every time my brain's saying, hey, enough's enough. It's like, all right, just go a little further. How much further can I push this? So I think our word choice, like Ryan always says, abracadabra, with my words I create.
Right.
And ultimately we're having a lot of negative self-chatter in our heads, destroying our own selves with the words we use, whether it's out loud or in our own heads. But I think definitely word choice has been a big takeaway for me this year as well.
Yep, I'm right there with you. And to circle back to the mornings, I think of when people ask me what my spiritual philosophy is, they see like a cross on my neck. I grew up a little religious. We weren't going to church every single week, but my prayers, I actually say intentions during my prayers. And I've realized that I especially do it in the morning on the way to work, which is another good invitation for anyone listening. See how it feels to go to work and not listen to music, not listen to a podcast. Don't put the radio on.
Yep. Silent ride.
Like, you might it might sound like I'm a psychopath because I'm driving to work without any music or anything, and that's okay. But in those silent periods, especially if you have any spiritual philosophies, you get to really honor what you're feeling, and it's not a distraction.
Right.
When we're continually listening to something.
Right.
Something I got from Eric in Martha's Vineyard, which is a great quote. A lot of people are allergic to silence. And sometimes I notice that in myself. Sometimes I'm like, oh, okay, I'm listening to music in the car. I get home and I would put something on when I'm making food. And it's like, why not just not put anything on?
Right.
And just hear the food heating up, or be able to sweep the floor and only be thinking about sweeping the floor. That's how you're present.
Right.
And it's not a distraction if you're present.
Right.
You know, limiting those distractions allows you to become more disciplined, which allows the freedom to come into play. And to bring it all together, your thoughts become your words, become your actions.
Right.
And there was a study done at Harvard, for those of us that need research, called the expectancy factor. So we could apply this to lifting weights. If someone's doing a heavy weightlifting movement and they have a bad thought before, and I hear people say this in the gym. I heard a kid say yesterday, bro. I'm like, I wouldn't think that way, man. You know, don't think that. He's like, oh, this is gonna suck. He's going to lift a couple hundred pounds off the ground. I'm like I'm not telling him what to do, but I'm like, I wouldn't invite you to think like that before, because what you think about, you're going to ultimately manifest and create, which is a more simple way of putting it. You create what you think about. You become your thoughts.
Right. And on the working out topic, it's funny you say that, because I recognize, as I've been getting back into, lifting heavy weights again, those old thought patterns of, like you said, oh, this is going to suck. Oh, this is supposed to be hard. Oh, this isn't supposed to feel good. Like all these just like random negative thoughts. And so something I've been saying, if anytime I'm coming up to a weight and I was like, oh, like this, I'm just put more weights on, like more than I've done before. And like that thought of like, I don't know if I can do this pops up. I just have this thing, I am strong, this is light. And it's just like very simple. But then I say that and it instantly snaps me out of that negative thought pattern, because like you said, if I go into this, say, oh, this is going to suck, I'm going to probably injure myself, do something stupid.
Yeah.
So my little saying I've been doing is, I am strong, this is light. And of course, a lot of times it's not light, but even that doesn't matter. I'm reminding myself, I'm strong, I can do this. It's not saying I'm not going to get injured.
Right.
It's not using that negative in there. It's a positive affirmation instead of, the line of that I really like is move towards your bliss, not away from your stress. So instead of saying, I don't want to get injured, saying I'm strong. It's basically the same thing, same side of the, two different sides of the same coin.
Yeah.
But recognizing that our thoughts, and, like Paul Chek says, the answer to every prayer is yes. Your brain isn't hearing the negation. If you say I'm not injured, all it's hearing is I'm injured. Like it's not picking up on the not. So like you said, if we're going into a workout saying, hey, this is going to suck, you're right. It's probably going to suck. Right. But if you say, hey, don't lift these weights, you're going to make the most of it. You're going to try. big thing with the last retreat. Just got to try it.
Try it.
Just try it all. Keep trying.
Try it out. Yeah. That might be one of the moments where you had to be there for it to be funny.
Right.
Which is a good joke. Like someone tells you a story and it doesn't sound that funny. And then they're like, oh, I guess you had to be there. Right. It might be one of those situations, maybe. But yeah, it doesn't hurt to try. Right. And that's the only way we learn, is by trying things out.
Right. Well, just to share that story, just kind of give the try story out there. So we're at our Ice and Iron Men's retreat. We're doing some mushrooms. We have this nice bowl concoction that Ryan made at the Martha's Vineyard retreat, which is basically sliced up apples, frozen wild blueberries, which are, not frozen anymore, peanut butter. We had chocolate symbiotica sauce, probably something else in there. And it's just this incredible bowl of just deliciousness, just every sensation in the body, eating with your hands like a fucking animal. And somehow in the mix of that, I think it was someone saying,
I said, my uncle mentioned this years ago. He's a successful guy. And we were talking about something. And he said, I like people who try,
Mm,
you know, and that really resonated and stuck with me. Like, people that are successful have tried different
right.
avenues and
You probably failed a lot.
learned from those failures,
Right.
which someone might think, oh, you failed, you didn't
Right.
succeed. But in reality, you learned from that failure and you carried it over to
Right.
your next endeavor.
Right.
And that's the moving forward model.
Right.
But yeah, you got to try it.
Right. Yeah. And so you were mentioning that, and someone I think was a little hesitant because we were all shoving our hands in there, and it's like I think I made the comment of like this is a germaphobe's worst nightmare, it's just people sticking their hands in there and all that. And someone was like, I'm just gonna try it after that. And then it just became this whole thing. Like anytime it's like you just gotta try it. So if when you're listening to this, just try something new, try something different, try to be open to trying is what it comes down to. And like you said about, the failures, it's just a learning experience. I forget who it was. Maybe it was like Nikola Tesla or someone who made some great, maybe it's Einstein, and someone was saying, oh, you failed like 200 times or 300 times trying to make this. And he's like, no, I just started crossing out things that didn't work.
Right.
It's not a failure. Like, I mean, even when I think of the fact when I was with that startup company in LA, which seems like a freaking lifetime ago, granted, it was only like 3 years ago, but I think back to that and you could say, yeah, the company failed. Or I look at it as like, wow, I learned so much about startup companies, about entrepreneurship, about, teamwork, about warning signs when things aren't going in the right direction that I ignored because I was like, oh, these people probably know better than me. They've been doing this longer. But I noticed these things and I just didn't bring them to the surface because, I didn't know any better. And now I know if I see those in the future, yeah, it's probably a sign that things aren't going down the right path. So I don't really look at much as failures. It's just feedback. And that was another big thing from last retreat that I picked up is everything's just feedback. Come back to the tools. Nothing's positive or negative. It's all just feedback. It's all how we decide up here how we want to categorize it or label it or analyze it.
Right.
Everything in life is just feedback.
Yeah. What's your perspective?
Right.
How do you perceive that failure? If you see it as you didn't succeed and not that this allowed me to learn something that's getting me one step closer to making it metaphorically, then I feel that's the best way we can be is flip that perspective from making a loss or a failure to a lesson, simple way to encapsulate it.
And you tried.
And you got to try.
You can't hate people that try.
No way.
So with this being said, so kind of just painting the picture of 2021 right now for people. Ice and Iron has definitely had a lot of growth. We tried an online community. We tried an online community. It was incredibly valuable, but it was tough, because everybody's already on Zoom calls all the time. We can make up all the reasons why. We chose that it wasn't worth our time and the people, attending. We tried that. That was a good learning experience. I think it's still something that we may do down the road, but, when the timing is right. But, we had an evolution of that, Ice and Iron online community. We had the Mandala workshop. We had the retreat that we went to down in North Carolina with Lissa and Zavi, which is a great experience. Then we had the retreat where we were co-facilitating with Ryan down at Martha's Vineyard. Met a lot of incredible people, that I'll look back on that and just be so grateful for all the dudes that came out to that and very excited to see them all again. And then we had, again, a lot of things in between, a lot of great Ice and Iron events, a lot of great, calls, personal growth, all that. And then we had our Ice and Iron retreat a couple of weeks ago. And now we're here. It's almost the end of July. We got a couple of days left and we're over the hump of the halfway point. We're entering into August. So we got August, September, October, November, December. We're coming up on, we're probably like 55% of the way through, maybe 60%. So where would you say right now most of your energy is going compared to where it was, 7 months ago?
I feel I'm spending more time, a little more work effort, but doing my best to not let that burn me out. So it is sustainable.
Right.
And realizing that balance point of I'm putting a lot of effort with this one client and researching things that might be something off the beaten path. It's not just a regular workout program, and that's great. But if I overexpend and I put too much energy in that and detract from A, caring for Jordan, or B, caring for everyone else that I get to work with, then that is not sustainable. It's not going to last. And then also realizing that there is a way to be successful, to be on your own and be killing it without burning out.
For sure.
And doing my best to find that middle point and trying to find that middle point.
You mentioned the project you're working on, online stuff. What's that looking like?
So that's in the very early stages, but I envision it being basic guidance of self-care, from learning to deal with stress in a positive manner, to learning to breathe, to learning to walk and work in. Like we discussed on the last talk, a working in practice could be anything from Tai Chi to just standing out barefoot.
Right.
And then learning to set intentions and become more still, become more present. And that's how we get creative, at least for me. I know some of my best thoughts come to me when I'm practicing Tai Chi or just sitting and breathing and doing nothing.
Right.
So I see my program as being something that's going to teach people to become a bit more balanced and whole, and learn to continue to, do what they're already doing, but empower them to have a couple more tools in their toolbox of basic self-care. Because in today's world, we really have overlooked the basics. We've lost intention of our breath. Most people don't. Many people, I'll say, don't even consider the importance of what type of water they drink, let alone drinking water in general.
Right.
And I intend to just share those basic things that have worked for me, that have worked with people I know and love, and people I get to work with in my community. Just sharing what I've learned from my experience and helping people help themselves in that regard.
Oh, yeah.
With the basics and not be on medicine forever.
Right.
I'm not against medicine, but if someone has a headache, they have migraines, or they're maybe depressed. Okay, I'm not saying they don't need medicine, but I'm saying you could maybe try to get outside. You could try to drink spring water and add, Celtic sea salt, or start your day with water and lemon and some real salt.
Try to work on your relationships.
Yeah, try to sit and feel what's going on instead of continually playing music or listening to another podcast or worrying about another book, which is something I realized from the Mandala workshop we took, that I have all the answers I need. And I've taken a lot of courses and studied a lot of things, and I'm often reading. I'm a student of life. I'm not an expert, and I never claim to be, but I have the answers I need right now. And something I love, Brother Ed Madden, got to bring him up real quick, shared. I believe Trevor Hall said this. If I don't know something right now, I don't need to know it. If I didn't say something, like today, I might think back later on and think, I wish I had brought that up. But if I didn't say it, it didn't need to be said.
Right.
If I did say something, it had to be said.
Right.
So I think that's just a really cool perspective as well.
Definitely. Well, even just like you're saying, we can read all these books, read all these podcasts. And the big thing for me, I recognize if I'm, filling the space with music, if I'm just hitting next, if no song is really, hitting it for me, it's like, all right, I'm not supposed to listen to something right now. And I think it's easy to get into this, become like a personal development junkie that I definitely fell into for a while. It's like, I got to fill every moment with productivity. Got to fill every moment with learning, every moment with getting better. But sometimes the best we can do, like we said earlier, is to step back.
Yeah.
And like you said, if something doesn't pique my interest, there's a lot of things people in our community send us links all the time, tons of videos, all these type of things. A lot of them I don't watch, if I'm being honest, because it's like, it's like, yeah, they sent it to me, and then it's like, I feel obligated to watch it because they sent it to me because it was a nice thing for them to think of me. But at the end of the day, there's already so much coming in here that if I read the title or watch a few seconds and it doesn't grab me, I don't need it right now. Maybe I'll come back to it. But, one thing come back to like what Eric said, what fascinates you? That's a question he likes to ask people. I think that's a good thing. Like if someone doesn't pique my curiosity, someone doesn't fascinate me, I don't want to learn something just because I feel like I should learn it, because I should know about it. I should be able to talk about it. I think that's a big thing. I recognize growing up is like I never really watched a lot of movies. Like you can ask me like every fucking movie, I'm like, I don't know any of them. Like I never watched movies. A lot of that is just I couldn't sit still long enough to actually sit through a 2-hour movie, but a lot of it was, people being like, "Oh, you don't know that movie? How have you never seen it?" It's like, no, didn't fascinate me. It didn't pique my curiosity. And that's okay. And it's okay to not know all the freaking trivia answers to every question. Like, just because, maybe one time I'll go to a bar and there'll be trivia, and next might be on trivia, I should memorize. I was like, really? Like, is that valuable to you?
No.
And so I think that, big intention of mine moving forward, like I mentioned earlier, is the discipline. And also to, like I was saying, to focus on like fewer tasks, but do them more effectively. Like put out my gardening ebook. If you're listening, free download, check it out, put it in the description box.
Get that.
And then working on my gardening course. That's the plan is to have that come out September 18th, which is the 3-year anniversary of Whole Health Connection. So that's the goal. See how got a lot of work to do between now and then, but focusing more on fewer things instead of spreading myself so thin with a lot of projects. Because I love to, I'm just naturally curious. I like to try a lot of things, like do a lot of things, like to connect with a lot of people. Like it's just, but that virtue can also be a vice in that it draws me back by overextending myself. So big intention for me moving forward is to work on projects and complete those projects before accepting a new one and really opening up the mental real estate in my head. Because my brain is just constantly going. Part of why I have a hard time sitting still, my brain is just thinking about everything. Oh, Whole Health Connections. Oh, Ice and Iron. Oh, podcasts. Oh, Purium. Oh, this. Oh, that. And then just like boom, 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 boom. Just like never ending pinball machine of ideas, which is great. But if I don't ground those ideas, now I'm just overanalyzing, overthinking. Oh, let me do that for 10 minutes. Oh, let me do that for 10 minutes. Let me do that for 5 minutes, and just doing a little bit of everything. By the end of the day, it's like, yeah, I made a little bit of progress in a lot of things, but what if I just took 6 weeks of, instead of doing a little bit every day, and took 6 days, finished one thing, then moved on to the next thing? And I think that's a big challenge. I'm working on just my own personal growth, but just in the past couple of weeks of having that attention, maybe 3 weeks, however long it's been, definitely feeling more aligned with where I'm going, and that feels good.
I love that. That makes me think of the way our vision works. When we could look at like this cool cup, I could see this guy's face. He looks like a fisherman, right? And then I can see in your kitchen the beautiful stuff you have going on up there. And I can look outside and look at the birds and the trees. But if I'm not focusing on one thing, I'm not able to appreciate it, first of all, and be present with it and experience it. But if we're talking being productive and efficient, you're not able to complete that task.
Right.
You're not able to put a black line through the hardest thing on your list. To go back to the morning, you're writing a list out for the day. Get the hard things done first.
Right.
Like you're already doing. So that's a great tip, is focus on the things that are most important and allocate most of your time to that.
Right.
That might be your practice. That might be getting the rest you need. That might be being with your family more. Whatever that looks like, but get clear on your values, get clear on your goals, and let that create your discipline, create your habits, because we're a creature of habit. And I speak to people that are in their middle ages all the time, and I'm sharing something in regards to their lifestyle, and I feel they know it's critical, but it's tough to make that change in the latter stages of our life than if you're in your 20s or you're a teenager. It takes 300 reps to learn a new movement pattern, whether it's a squat or a push-up or whatever. it's going to take you 3,000 to relearn that pattern. And I could carry that into your day-to-day practices. You know, I didn't always start my day with a morning prayer, but most of the time I do. And I realize it's giving me more focus and more intention with how I spend my time when I say these prayers, and I set intentions while doing them, or I make the time to do a mantra meditation, or whatever your practice looks like for you. But I think trying these practices out, experiencing them, seeing what works, and then seeing if that's allowing you to build momentum, and then not be overwhelmed by this guy said that, they said that, they said that. Try it out. See what they said, and if you like it, use it. If you don't like it, like Bruce Lee said, if you don't like it, get rid of it, throw it away.
100%. Well, that also opens up something up to me that I want to invite everybody watching and listening to do, is write down what your goals are. Write down what your core values are, because like Jordan's saying, this is going to be a lot easier if you actually know what your goals and core values are. But if you don't know what your goals and core values are, how are you going to know what practices to utilize to get you there? Because like you said, there's a million different people telling us a million different things. And if you try to do all of them, you can't do all. You physically can't do everything that's out there and all the advice is being given.
Yeah.
So I think it's important to get clear. And that's also a practice I've been embarking on as often as I can, sometimes every couple of weeks, but at least once a month, is reminding myself, what are my goals? What are my intentions? What are my core values? And that helps me be clear and also remind myself on the days where I'm feeling unmotivated, the days where I'm just feeling like the sky is falling, which I have those days. I think we all have those from time to time, get into that negative cycle. So on those days, it reminds me of, why am I doing this? What am I working towards? And I think that's a big factor. And another, this is coming to me now, another big quote from the last retreat, it's all part of the game. It's all part of the game. All these ups and downs and freaking loop-de-loops and corkscrews, all part of the game. Every challenge, every failure, every victory, every great moment, every tough moment, all part of the game. And if we can try to fight the game, but this game of life, we can't control much, but we can control how we react in here and how we perceive everything.
Yeah.
It's all part of the game.
It's part of the game, and a big part of the game of life. To go back to the word react versus respond, the one thing we can control is our breath. So you can choose your breath, like we say at Ice and Iron. Choose the breath you want before you get in that ice tub, right? Because if you choose a low and slow breathing pattern before you jump in that ice, you're not going to be breathing erratic and all over the place. And to touch on the word react versus respond, if we are responsible, that means we're able to respond. And a lot of people, sometimes myself included, have reactionary tendencies and will react to someone cutting you off. Someone might be getting cut off right now when they're listening to this in their car. It's your choice to react. Or you can respond and take a breath and give that guy, chuck him a deuce, give him a thumbs up, say, hey, you got that, buddy. You beat me to the next red light. Whatever. Who cares? You know?
And who knows what they're going through? Maybe their dog is in the backseat of the car. They're trying to get to the hospital.
100%.
Because it's funny. It actually reminds me when a few years ago, when my dog, who we had to put him down about a year and a half ago, this is probably 2-3 years ago, I had to drive him to the hospital because he's an 80-pound dog. I had to lift him up, put him in the car because he was like, I thought he was dying. I can't even tell you how many fucking stop signs I blew, how many people I cut off. Like I was like, because it was like, my dog could be dying right now. So I didn't give a shit about being rude while driving. I was like, this is more important. So we never know what other people are going through.
I was about to say that. You don't know what anyone's going through. And everyone's going through something. Which is always fascinating.
It is.
And that's a nice perspective to put you in an empathetic or compassionate place to relate to other people and say, hey, I don't know what this person's going through. Let me give them some grace and forgiveness, because maybe there's a reason they're so reactionary. They didn't learn how to breathe, or they're going through an actual crisis. And that's quite literally what they have to do to get through it. Because sometimes we need to be in that yang state and then go, go, go. That's important.
It is.
The stress hormones are important.
They are.
They keep us alive.
That's why we're here right now. The
Amen.
species wouldn't be here without them.
Amen. That's the balance of life.
It is.
You know, we respond well to circle back to ice baths. We respond well to stress in a small dose.
Acute stresses.
Acute, right. So working out is a good one. Being in a hot room, sauna, steam room, that's a good stress. Cold water immersion, like an ice tub, even cryotherapy, but I'm more sold on the ice tub because it's pretty much free to take a cold shower. But without being too long-winded, the hormetic response, we grow stronger from that stress.
Right.
We're just not meant to be stressed out all day. We're meant to have cortisol high in the morning,
ups and downs,
get things done, and it should be going down. And then that goes back to the morning practice. So are you winding down in the evening? What's your habits like in the evening?
Right.
Because if you're watching TV, like many people do, I used to always be watching The Office before bed. And that's funny, that's great. I still love the show. But it definitely it wasn't in alignment with getting good rest. And I still feel to this day that has led some detriment to my winding down practices, which I've gotten a lot better now that I don't watch TV anymore, or hardly, especially at night. And I'm realizing the importance of blue blockers and all these things we learned along the way. But it's just fascinating that, you know, we become what we do, what we think about, and we're a creature of habit. So instill a more balanced habit.
Right.
You know, make time to do things that are going to give you more energy in return than you're expending. Because choosing to tune in to something stressful, like it could be anything from social media to the news or junk food.
Right.
You know, that can become an addiction.
Right. Whatever vibration that is, comes in many forms.
100%. That's going to lower that vibration. And then you get into guilt and shame. You're guilting yourself, or you feel shame for something that you're watching on the news about whoever's running the country, in air quotes. And those are low vibrations.
Right.
And you could flip the coin and have gratitude and forgiveness. And that's going to foster faith and hope.
Right.
And when you have faith and hope and love, you're in some of the highest vibration.
Right.
And those vibrations literally create your reality. And I know we touched on this in April last year, which is crazy how quick that went by. But your vibration is a big word for the word vibe.
Right.
That some people perceive as, it could be a woo-woo word. Your vibe. They have a good vibe. You see the shirts all the time. Good vibes only. Yeah. I love that, because they're literally putting out a good vibration just by rocking that shirt.
Right.
Versus not vibrating on a high level. So your vibration, your vibe attracts your tribe. And that's why I feel we met. That's why we've connected with so many people around the country that we've met them on retreats. We've met them at Ice and Iron. And it's just a really cool ride, a cool journey we're on to be playing this game.
It is. We're going to keep it going.
We're going to keep it going.
Oh, yeah. So, on the vibe attracts your tribe note, kind of coming full circle here, we talked about discipline equals freedom. Talked about many lessons learned from this year, many intentions moving forward. I've been reminded, especially since March of 2020, when all this bullshit began, how important community is, how essential community is. And so what I really want to invite you as a listener or viewer, whether you're watching or listening to this, is to find out where you can surround yourself with supportive people. Because if we're surrounding ourselves with people that are bringing us down, those low vibrations, those negative thoughts, that negative input, whether that's food, alcohol, whatever it is, you can pretend like that's not affecting you.
Mm.
Even if it's not conscious, it's subconsciously, it's emotionally, spiritually draining you.
Mm.
So I want to invite you, if you're listening to this, if you're in the Boston area, come to an Ice and Iron. If you're not in the Boston area, maybe come into for one of our retreats. Maybe hit us up about the Purium community to share organic foods, to focus on improving ourselves, to create time freedom, to live a holistic lifestyle. So whatever your community looks like, find that group that's going to help you get better, because they say you're the average of the 5 people you spend the most time with. And I can say, Jordan is now one of the 5 people I spend the most time with. And there's a lot of times I'm doing something that's like, oh yeah, I think Jordan showed me this one. Oh yeah, I think Ed showed me this one. Oh yeah, that's definitely, Jackie, that's her influence. Just seeing the different people's influence in my life and being very aware of that. It's cool. It's very cool.
Super cool.
It's very different than before when it was like arguing. Oh, I see this side. That was, this buddy. Oh, that, conflict, that trying to be right. Oh, that's because we used to argue all the time with that person I used to spend a lot of time with. So it goes on both sides. So take home message that I'm driving at here is, how can you find community? If you can't find it, create it.
Right.
That's what we did with Ice and Iron. We said, if we build it, they will come. I mean, it's been about a year and a half since we started it. Over a year and a half, actually.
Yep.
And it took some time to get some traction. We were losing money for quite a while. Now we're breaking even, which is cool. But at the end of the day, if you don't have community, build them. And the like-minded people will come. They will grow. If you want support, you want community, hit us up. I'm going to put Jordan's Instagram tag in the description here. Obviously, you'll have mine in here. Check out what Jordan's doing. Check out what we're doing with Ice and Iron. Check out what we're doing with Purium. Create your own community. The opportunities are endless. We live in a digital world. There's millions of Facebook groups for anything you could possibly. You're into freaking Yu-Gi-Oh cards still? I used to love Yu-Gi-Oh cards. If you're still into that, there's probably a Facebook group for it. There's probably a community that still trades and battles Yu-Gi-Oh cards. Whatever you're into, surround yourself with people you want to be more like. Because that's going to ultimately, change your life. Find that discipline, get clear on your goals, get clear on your vision, your mission, your values, and just take the action. Get uncomfortable. That's really what we all need more of, is to be uncomfortable. But also, again, find the balance. Maybe there's a time you got to be more comfortable. Maybe you're putting yourself too much to be too uncomfortable. But just be honest with yourself. I think that's really what it comes down to, is just got to be honest with ourselves. Where am I at? And I remember there's one in the David Goggins book, Can't Hurt Me. He says, if you need to lose weight, don't say that, everything's okay. It's like, say you're fat. Say you're fucking fat and you need to lose weight. Because if you don't admit that, you're not going to change. If you are trapping yourself, if you're being a negative Nancy, don't say, oh, I'm positive Muslim. Just say you're being negative. It's okay to admit that.
Yeah.
Because if we can admit that, now we can change. So if we can be honest with ourselves, get clear with our mission, vision, and values, surround ourselves with like-minded people, and be disciplined, I think we're going to be moving in a better direction.
Yeah, it's a beautiful world. And to kind of wrap up what you said, I love it all. And I fully agree that being around people that build you up is what we are going to be best suited to live a better life, being around others that you can emulate and not detracting from your energy. And one final thought that is coming to me, I want to share with the viewers and listeners: believing in yourself and knowing that you're worth it. First of all, you're worth it to care for yourself. You're worth it to get good rest. You're worth it to eat good food and make time for yourself, because it's sacred to care for yourself and honor how you feel. Be honest with yourself, honor it. And if someone says something that you don't agree with, that's okay. You don't need to listen to them. But if they're right and they're right, and you're being delusional by saying, oh, I don't want to hear that.
Or egotistical, you don't want to be wrong.
And it's like, you can't accept that constructive criticism or the tough love that you may get from a family member or a loved one or a partner. If you can't accept that tough love, then you're not going to grow.
Right.
And you might push that person out of your life.
Right.
When sometimes tough love is the best thing you can get from a family member or
100%.
give yourself without being harsh or detrimental. Sometimes, like you said, I'm not telling people that are overweight to say, hey, I'm fat. I'm not saying that at all, but I'm saying honor what is really going on the inside. Because what's going on the inside, you reflect on the outside.
Right.
And we live in an era when people want to have good skin and they want to have big muscles, but we want the quick fix. We want to take a supplement or put a cream on, and not think about
the lifestyle.
What your skin looks like, how your eyes look, how your energy is. That's from what you're putting into your body, into your vessel. So know that you're worth it to care for yourself. You're worth it to eat real food and get outside daily and find a practice that you love and enjoy.
Oh, yeah. Awesome, brother. Well, again, everybody listening, thank you for tuning in to this live episode. I'll put all the links to Jordan's stuff in the description box. I'll put the links to my stuff. If you want to download that free gardening ebook, check that out. Keep you all posted with the updates for when that course is going to come out for the gardening course. Got a lot of cool stuff in the pipelines. Both myself, Jordan individually, myself individually, Ice and I as a collective. We're growing and flowing. We're getting better every day.
Yep.
So let's keep it going, my friends. Appreciate you all. Jordy, thanks for being here, bro.
Just getting started.
Keep it going. Thanks, everybody. Peace.